18 years now. So young, enterprising college students engaged in this question around the Congo, the challenge of the Congo. To the exchange, especially very impactful film, soundtrack to a coup d'etat, which is nominated for an Oscar. A documentary well received across the globe. And there are a number of institutions and organizations, universities, who are screening the soundtrack to a coup d'etat as a part of Congo Week. And it's one of the films that we have in our film section for the Congo Week toolkit, where people can go and access films and screen them in order to learn more about what's unfolding, what has unfolded in the Congo, and what's currently unfolding. So really glad that you all took it up and had a screening, and I'm eager to hear the questions and the comments. I'd like to start out just by you all telling us what what y'all thought about the film and how you felt about it. How did the rest of the students feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, granted, it was a long film,
Yes.
and we only got to a certain portion of it. However, we got through a considerable amount. Some of the questions that we had were, what is the relationship between the Congo's mineral resources within the Katanga province and these materials for war? We saw a very important clip where it was announced that the once disarmament was announced, the New York stock plummeted. So, what is that economic relationship, and why are people so invested in the Congo's mineral resources?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the short answer, of course, is that the Congo is filled with precious and strategic resources, mineral resources, that are vital to like a range of industries, right? The ones that you probably are most familiar with, like the technology sector, depends on resources. Minerals that come out of the Congo. You have the electronics sector. You have the automobile sector. You have the aerospace sector and military, right?
Yeah.
So historically, probably the best example to paint a picture for you in terms of the centrality of Congo's minerals to military industry, to take you back to World War II, when the United States was in a race against the Soviet Union to develop its atomic weapons under its Manhattan Project. And they were able to do that. However, in order for them to develop the atomic weapons, they need the natural resources. And the key natural resources for atomic weapon is uranium. So Congo was the primary, dominant source for the uranium that was used in developing the atomic weapons that were ultimately dropped on Japan. Right? Some uranium came from Canada, but the overwhelming majority, the highest, best quality, came from the Congo, in a place called Shinkolobwe. And there's a book that's written by a remarkable writer, Susan Williams. She wrote a book entitled Spies in the Congo. So for people who want to get a sense of that colonial era enterprise, she's a really good source to consult. Now, that's the legacy. Today, as a part of Congo Week, one of the events that we're hosting is with folks in Hiroshima. And we're looking at the supply chain and its impact on people in Japan and people in the Congo. Have professors and activists in Hiroshima who are going to be joining with frontline organizers in the Congo. We're facilitating it, Friends of the Congo, that is. And we work with a coalition of organizations inside the country called the Basanja Coalition. And one of the key efforts on the part of the Basanja Coalition is to produce knowledge through a variety of avenues that convey the experiences, the ideas, the stories of the Congolese people. And one of the films that's been produced in that vein by Congolese filmmaker Petna Daliko, Katondolo. He's one well-known Congolese filmmaker. He's a part of his organizations, are part of the Basanja Coalition, and they produced a film called Luanzo. And the folks in Hiroshima translated the film into Japanese. They're going to be building on the historical connection between Hiroshima in particular and the Katanga province, because that's where Shinkolobo is, and the uranium at the time. So that's one historic example. In the early 80s, the United States developed what it called its cobalt policy, right? And people are familiar with cobalt primarily because of its importance to batteries, right?
Yeah.
And however, dominant use for the cobalt is in U.S. Military, right? Where cobalt is an alloy. It's a mineral that the United States doesn't have a lot of reserves, or very little, and they have to stockpile it as a part of U.S. national and strategic interests, right? Mm-hmm. So cobalt is a key mineral that's vital to U.S. strategic interests. The United States in the early 1980s, they developed the cobalt policy, because they were concerned as to how oversupply disruptions and that can affect what they call their national defense stockpile, right?
Yeah.
So that's a key example of the strategic importance of Congo's minerals to the U.S. military, right? The special study that it did was in 1992. People can look it up. The U.S. government, cobalt policy options for a strategic mineral. That was published in 1992 by the Congressional Budget Office, right? And that's another example of the importance of a mineral like cobalt. And if you know anything about the Congo is tremendously endowed with cobalt. Congo has about half the reserves of cobalt in the world, and they produce 70%, up to 70% of the world's cobalt right now. Right? We really have to balance that a little bit. We should probably the more accurate articulation of it is that 70% of the world's cobalt comes out of the Congo, right? Because the Congolese there aren't Congolese companies that are controlling it. The Congolese parastatal, like Jacqueline, they don't control it. It's primarily controlled right now by Chinese companies to the tune of about 80% or so, right? So the cobalt that's coming out of the Congo is not being produced by Congolese in the sense that they're not the owners and the controllers of it, right? Yeah, there are artisanal miners that may dig it up, but the beneficiaries, those who are controlling the supply chain right now, are the Chinese and other European and Canadian companies. So that to give you a sense, anyways, are a few examples. There are many more. The minerals. There's coltan. Well, that's more in the east of the country, but the copper, the cobalt, and copper is equally important as well, especially when it comes to wiring, when it comes to commercial use. And Congo is the second largest producer of copper in the world, behind Chile. Probably the distinction between the two countries, Congo and Chile, is that Chile has a parastatal that mines and produces the copper, where Congo doesn't.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions thus far? Yes.
Great. Hi, I'm Talia. I'm currently an undergrad here at Berkeley. I have a question regarding, so in addition to educating ourselves and then learning from others about the issues going on in the Congo, what can we personally do to stop this or help this issue? What can I physically do? That's
Good question. Good question. Hey, y'all at Berkeley, is Adam Hochschild still at Berkeley? Professor
Adam
Hochschild.
Hochschild. And what department?
I think it'd be history. He wrote the book King Leopold's Ghost. King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. He's a I don't know if he's still a professor there at Berkeley, but it'd be good to check him out. That's a really good question about what can be done. I think part of the reason why we organize Congo Week, right, is to provide a space for learning around the Congo. And the materials that we provide on CongoWeek.org on the website, the toolkit, the films, the book list, the articles, the fact sheets, all that is to assist in learning. Basically, I guess we can call it a popular curriculum, right? Which is a prerequisite for the type of engagement that you're talking about. That's really the first thing that you can do. And we also have on our social media platforms, Congo Friends on Instagram in particular, we have clips from organizers in the Congo on the front lines who are organizing on the ground, right? Not just solely involved in a humanitarian undertaking, but involved in political or popular education and movement building, right? And in those clips, they share the leaders on the front lines. They're primarily a part of the Basanja Coalition, and just for Basanja is Basandja, Basanja, right? They're primarily part of the Basanja Coalition, and they're providing those clips for us on the outside to share with us how we can best engage in supporting their efforts on the inside of the country. One of the first things that they say is, of course, to listen, to learn. And right in line with that, they share with us on the outside that they have the answers. They have the answers to resolve the challenges that they face. They're not counting on us to provide the answers for them, right? That's why they're encouraging us to listen and to learn so that we can discover what prescriptions they're undertaking in order to change their country, because they're the ones who are ultimately responsible for bringing about that change. So, and in doing that, they're inviting us to participate, right? They're inviting us to participate in this dignified struggle that they're undertaking in order to recapture their land, recapture their resources, recapture their wealth, recapture their own affairs. This is, of course, for the masses of Congolese, right? So how can, and they share with us, how can we best engage in that undertaking? And one of the initiatives that they've launched, which I shared with you, is knowledge production, right? And it's really important because when we advocate from the outside, we come in with a complex. It's almost by default. That we got to go and help these folks, right? We got to help the Congolese. And what they're saying, folks in the Basanja Coalition and the knowledge production, we are not seeking help. We are seeking solidarity. We are producing information, films, books, articles that we would like for you on the outside to engage with, right? Not solely for the undertaking of solidarity, but there's some things that you can gain from it, right? There's this one film that like the Basanja Coalition has produced films on different parts of the country because they're a coalition throughout the country. So they have films that deal with the conflict in the east of the country. They have films that deal with the rainforest in the north of the country. They have films that deal with the peatlands in the west of the country. And they have a series of films that deal with the mining areas in the south of the country, right? And one film that they've produced, it's called Basanja, a tree prayer. And in that film, they lay out the indigenous, traditional Congolese principles of justice, right? Of justice, what justice looks like from the tradition. In this case, the primary group they're focusing on is the Topoke, who are in the Isangi district in the Chopo province of Congo, in and around Kisangani. And they lay out key principles around justice and how traditional culture carried out justice. It was based on three principles. One, truth-telling. The village elder, council bring disputing parties together, and the truth must be told, right? Two, reconciliation. Has to be a commitment to reconcile, right? And three, reparations. So truth, reconciliation, reparations. Now this is what we have to offer to the world, coming out of deep out of the rainforest that has been victim of this colonial prism whereby we see Africa in general as a dark continent, Congo in particular as the heart of darkness. So what that says is there's nothing worth exploring there. There's no philosophy, beliefs, it's just subhumans, people who are inhabiting these spaces. So part of the undertaking of the coalition is to unearth and share with the world, and also with Congolese, because a major part of it is a decolonial project, right? Because Congolese and Africans are victims of colonialism. And one of the elements of that victimhood is that it uproots you from your culture to the point where you look outward for solutions, as opposed to looking inward, right? The Mbuti call it hapa hapa, here, right here, right? And the coalition is grounded in this system of agro-liberation, right? Which is really the African expression of decolonization, right? So they want to enroll you in that process, in learning more about what Congo has to offer to the world, learning about the prescriptions that these local and frontline organizations are pursuing to change the country. Because they know ultimately it's up to them to change it. What we can do is we can be allies. So what does it take to be a good ally? So concretely, what you're doing at Berkeley, the graduate students, providing a platform for this information to be shared, is one of the requests that they make, to amplify their stories, to stories that present themselves as fully human, right? Because we know the dehumanization of the African is one of the most detrimental tools used to keep us not only in a colonized state, but in a colonized mindset, right? So engaging, your graduate students, so engaging in a very serious way as graduate students with this content, with these ideas of justice, ideas of agro-liberation, agroecology, right? Movement building, right? So engagement in a very serious way. That can look like what you're doing right now there, studying, can look like making your thesis on matters in the Congo. We're working with a young lady from Stanford. She was writing her PhD in artificial intelligence. And she was engaging what women who had been displaced as a result of the war, who were then trapped in displacement camps, and exploring how does that these women who were trapped in displacement camps engage in knowledge production coming out of there, where they're organized in a way to, in the displacement camps, people come in with cameras all the time and say, look, see, it is really bad. And it is really bad. You know, they come with cameras, and they just, the people in the camps become objects, right? Beasts of burden, right? So these women wanted to flip the script and say, okay, we're in this condition because we're displaced as a result of the war, but we're teachers, we're nurses, you know, we have professions, we've just been displaced. So they said, we're gonna reclaim our story. So they utilized the camera. So they took their own pictures, they told their own stories, right? And produced a photo book and display that people are engaging all over the world. So, and one of the things that the women shared, and all of this was facilitated by a member of the Bassandra Coalition, Yole Africa, which really, and these women really exemplify the direction that Bassandra is going in, and saying, no matter how harsh the conditions are, right, we're not going to lose our humanity. And we're going to create possibilities out of these conditions as a path and inspiration for change. It may not happen like right now, but we're going to change our mindset so that we can be a optimum agent for change. So what the women say is that they never thought that being in the condition that they're in a displacement camp, little to no food, no sanitation, no privacy, very little water, right? Tattered shelter. They never thought that they would be able to put their minds in a space where they think about creating new possibilities and think about a future. So going through that agro-liberation process with the Basanjo Coalition, it revolutionized the way they thought about themselves, their conditions, and what's possible, even in the most dire of situations. So that when you even those of us who are here, and whether it's in Washington D.C. or in Berkeley or wherever, we can draw something from that, right? That's something that we can gain. So it's not just a one-way street, but we can benefit from engaging in that experience with these women and with the coalition. So that's to say, just that engagement, providing a platform, amplifying, right? There's a lot going on at Berkeley: climate, sustainability, right? How often are folks hearing from indigenous communities in arguably the most important carbon sink in the world? So you on campus, can you provide avenues for the films that they're producing to be screened when they have their climate conferences? You have a sustainability department at Berkeley. To what extent are they engaging with indigenous communities in the Congo? If they are, if they're not, it'd be good to say, hey, have you heard of the Basanjo Coalition? You bring them to campus virtually or wherever. They've been to campus to Berkeley before, but the more people we have championing their cause, the better. So that's where providing a platform for those stories to be amplified. Second, you have access to networks. You're part of a graduate student network throughout the country. You're there at Berkeley. How can you get others and other campuses to be doing what you're doing, to be engaged in the Congo, in study, in learning, and in action? So providing access to your networks, right? Networks that can assist in financially, materially, in terms of equipment, and intellectually, in terms of information, right? We're doing some really interesting things with students at Stanford. It'd be great to see the extent to which the coalition can do more, where this engagement serves as a point of departure for even deeper engagement, right? So those are some of the ways. Just to recap: providing a platform, providing access to your network, spreading the word about what's unfolding in the Congo, and those are like positive or community building. How you can be a part of the movement building effort inside the Congo, right? Now, other things you can do outside as well. U.S. foreign policy is highly problematic. We have petitions. If you go to freecongo.org, or letters that we're sending to members of Congress about the usage of U.S. taxpayers' dollars in fueling the conflict in the Congo. So if you go to freecongo.org, you see immediately action that you can take. One of the main sources of the instability in the Congo is the Rwandan government and its leader, Paul Kagame, and very cunning leader. And what he does, his country engages in sports washing. Sports washing is where crimes of the nation or the leaders commit crimes either within their own country or neighboring countries, in this case with Rwanda and the Congo. And in order to cover for those crimes, they get into partnerships or deals with sports teams and entertainers, so that when you're presented with them, you're presented a view like, oh, okay, they're hanging out with Kendrick Lamar. Oh, they're really cool. If you hang out with Kendrick Lamar, you're cool, right? You can't be like killing people and your soldiers raping people in a neighboring country. Oh, Dave Chappelle. Oh my gosh, you were hanging with Dave Chappelle, and then John Legend came. So you must be a good guy. Kendrick Lamar, Dave Chappelle, John Legend. There's no way you could be committing crime. There's no way that the United Nations could say that your soldiers could be brought up for charges of genocide. Dave Chappelle wouldn't be associated with genocide. John Legend wouldn't be associated with genociders. Neither would Kendrick Lamar. So the Rwandan government engages in sports washing and entertainment, and they just entered into a deal with the Los Angeles Clippers and the Rams. And they're deep in with the NBA. Amnesty International has a petition, I don't know if Quito can find it and share it with you, that calls on the NBA to cut its ties with Rwanda, as long as Rwanda is oppressing its people and committing crimes in the Congo. You're right up there from across the river from San Francisco. That's where the NBA All-Star game was this year in February. So we have a network of folks in the Bay Area that mobilized to protest at the All-Star game, protest the NBA's relationship with the Rwandan government. So when it comes to pressure, those are some, members of Congress, pressure on sponsors of the Rwandan government, the NBA, Los Angeles Clippers, the Rams, the entertainers. We've launched a campaign against John Legend, calling on him to do what his Thames of Nigeria, the singer, did. She said, Rwanda is killing in the Congo. I'm not going. They're killing Africans. I'm not going to Rwanda to perform. John Legend went. He didn't succumb to the pressure. However, he had to respond to it. He told the BBC that he didn't want to deprive the Rwandan people of the privilege, I guess, of seeing him perform. But what about the Congolese people who are being killed by the guy who invited you to his country? So those are some areas that you can, if you go to freecongo.org, number of actions you can take right off the bat.
I'm writing it down. Continue.
I hope that helps to that responded to the question a little bit. It was a long-winded answer, I know, but we have some time. You guys are graduate students. You're used to having professors lecture to you for hours and hours. Not that I'm not gonna do that, but
we have a couple of attendees who are off camera, but do you have any questions? Right now we're discussing the current situation in the Congo, the NBA's ties to the Rwandan government and how they use entertainers and sports entertainers to kind of cover up acts of genocide. Any questions? Yes.
My name is Bree. I'm also a big artist. You were talking about a professor that he's the teacher at child.
Oh, can she come closer? Because I'm not able to hear her. Maybe she can come to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better. Yes, your voice is projected. Thank you.
My name is Bree. I'm an undergrad student as well. You were talking about a professor that you said that taught at Berkeley, Adam Hartstein.
Yes.
Yeah, he does still teach.
Oh, okay. You should definitely seek him out. You should seek him out. Have him talk to you about his work around the Congo, especially his book. He covers. I think it was in 1999 he published King Leopold's Ghost, which was a groundbreaking book that unearthed a chapter in Congo's history that is not popularly known, right? The silence around what's happening in the Congo is not only contemporary, but it's also historical, right? In the sense that, in a 23-year period, when Congo was given to King Leopold II of Belgium at the Berlin Conference, 1884-1885, he ruled it for 23 years. And under his rule, the Congolese population was decimated by half. They lost half of their population. Right? An estimated 10 to 15 million Congolese perished as the king extracted rubber and ivory. Your first question you talked about was, Congo's resources, and rubber was at the end of the 1800s. Rubber was the dominant resource that was extracted to power Western industries, the bicycle and auto industry. So if you look at Congo's history, or its history as it relates to European encroachment, right? When in the late 1400s, Diogo Chao, the Portuguese explorer, came up on the shores of the Congo. From that point on, right, we saw the advance of Europe's extraction of resources from the Congo. And of course, the first resource that was extracted from the Congo and the continent were human beings, Africans. Emory University and UNESCO, they have a slavery study project. If you go to a website called Slave Voyages, slavevoyages.org, they look, you have some amazing maps and data that deals with the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the Americas. And let's say the West Central area of Africa, West Central area, that covers like the Congo Empire. Almost half of the Africans that were trafficked from the continent came from that area, according to their database, precisely 4 out of 10. So there's been this extractive process dating back to the early 1500s, and it's transformed and evolved in large part, in a lot of respects, dictated by advances in capitalism, right? So the primitive stage of capitalism, you saw that the labor, the human body was critical for the development of capitalism, right? And there are a number of books, Eric Williams, Capitalism and Slavery, he gets into it. There's a Harvard professor by the name of Sven Beckett. He has a book called The Cotton Empire, or The Empire of Cotton. I always confuse it. Where he talks about it as well, that the centrality of slave labor for the advancement of capitalism. And then when you get to the second phase of the industrial era of capitalism, the late 1800s, we see then is the natural resources that were critical, right? And we can run it all the way up to today. As the capitalism advances technologically, the advent of the cell phones, advent of the laptops and the computers, advent of the electric vehicles, we see Congo again paying a dear price, right? At the dawn of the 21st century, we see tremendous loss of life. And at the bottom, at the root of it, is the extractive process, the extraction of resources, whether it's coltan or tin or copper or cobalt. So part of our effort is to disrupt that process, right? There was a movement in the late 1800s, early 1900s, called the Congo Reform Association, right? To disrupt and take Congo away from the king, right? And it was successful, right? You had figures, and it was started by 2 Europeans, Roger Casement and Ed Morel, wrote a book called Red Rubber. There's also a film on our website that gets into that period, Red Rubber, Black Death. That's something that can be screened. And that's the graduate student network. We have so many films. You just mobilize your network to screen those films as a way of educating the students would already be a step in the right direction. But for the forefront of those movements, right, to take the Congo away from the king, were Black folks from the United States. They didn't have Twitter and Instagram and all that, but they were mobilizing with their Congolese brothers and sisters. There's a gentleman, a really incredible gentleman by the name of George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams, he was a Civil War hero. He fought in the Civil War in the United States, right? Coming out of the Civil War, he became an elected official in Ohio. He also went to university at Howard and a few others. Some people refer to him as the first African-American historian of note, right? In fact, the renowned African-American historian, jump out his name, John Hope Franklin. I'm sure you all read John Hope Franklin's work. He wrote a book on George Washington Williams called The Biography of George Washington Williams. George Washington Williams went to the Congo in 1890. And he said when he wanted to see what was going on, because King Leopold II said that he was in the Congo on a civilizing mission. But reports were coming out that weren't true. And the reports that were coming out were being produced by two other African Americans, husband and wife, William Shepherd and Lucy Gant Shepherd. They were Presbyterian missionaries, Presbyterian missionaries. In fact, Lucy Gant was the first to translate the Chiluba language into English and hymns, right? So they were producing reports that were getting out about what was happening in the Congo. So you had African Americans on the front line. Booker T. Washington, whom you all know, right? Up from slavery. He wrote a piercing essay, Cruelty in the Congo, where he, in certain spaces, he compares, slavery in the United States to what's happening in the Congo, but he brings, devastating critique of King Leopold II. And George Washington Williams himself, he said that when he went into the Congo and discovered what was happening, he said what was unfolding was tantamount to crimes against humanity, right? So you had all these figures. You had Mark Twain. Mark Twain was also involved. He wrote a book called King Leopold's Soliloquy. And it's a global movement to take the Congo away from the king, and it was successful in that. But the thing is, when the Congo was taken away from the king, right, it wasn't like they were taking it away to give it to the Congolese, right? That'd be too ambitious, right?
Yeah.
So it was turned over to the Belgian state. So Congo went from private property of the Belgian king to state property as a colonial outpost.
Yeah.
Right. So what that says is that the centrality of Congo's struggle from day one is for the people to regain control of their own affairs, right?
Well,
and yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for also mentioning that, because we've distributed a reading list, and I'll send that out to you all. In one of those books, it does mention the transition from King Leopold to the Belgian state, and then eventually Congolese independence under Patrice Lumumba. So I actually want to ask, what was Patrice Lumumba's role in attaining independence for the Congo, and how did that role transform as the UN got involved, et cetera?
Yeah, his role was significant. He was one of many independence heroes, right? Even interestingly enough, some of the people who turned out to be his arch enemy were vital in the fight for Congo's independence. Mentioning in particular Joseph Kasavubu, who became president, right? He turned out being the enemy of Congo, but under Belgian colonial rule, Kasavubu himself, he was more radical than Lumumba, right? As critical a role as Lumumba played in terms of his critique, in terms of his standing with the workers, in terms of his standing with the masses of Congolese, in terms of his mobilizing. An indication of this is that, for example, in 1958, Ghana was organizing what they call All People's Conference in Accra. And the people that they were familiar with in the Congo was Kasavubu and his Abako group, because they were the most active and most radical, wanting to end, colonialism now. And they wanted to invite Kasavubu to the All African People's Conference in 1958. But U.S. intelligence ran interference because they didn't want these radical folks hooking up with other radical folks, right? So, because they're under colonial rule. If you're getting out of Congo in 1958, you have to have permission from the state. You're not just going to get up and go to Ghana because you want to, right? You're a colonial subject. That means you have to have authorization from the colonial power. So they authorized Lumumba to go because he wasn't that radical. They figured that, he was pliable. He was more like he wanted to get along with the Belgians.
Yeah.
And don't just take my word for it. If you read his book, which was published prior to 1958, Congo, My Country, you'll clearly see his stance of wanting to cooperate with the Belgians, having the Belgians be a part of any transition towards independence, right? But when he went to Accra in 1958, he met folks like Nkrumah, he met folks like Fanon, right? He met a bunch of folks who were radical. Because remember, Fanon is coming to that conference at the 58 conference, on a mission. Because the conference, if you know Nkrumah and how they gained independence in Ghana, it was like nonviolent, for the most part, peaceful, right? Civil disobedience, civil. But Fanon was like, okay, that's cool for Ghana, but like I'm in Algeria, the French are killing folks. We gotta fight, we gotta shoot back, right? So it's that kind of radicalism that Lumumba is being exposed to, right? So in fact, that whole conference, coming out of that conference, that was one of the big debates. What are the means for achieving liberation, independence, right? On one hand, Nkrumah, civil disobedience, peaceful means, nonviolent means. There's also, Nkrumah is a student of Gandhi, right? He embraced the principles of Gandhi. And so Fanon was, what he said was like, listen, the French are like, there's no nonviolent, they're violent. And it demands a violent response. If Algeria is going to be free, it's going to be free through violence, right? And there's a really good film you can check out called The Battle of Algiers. It gets into that. Right? So coming out of the conference, there was the compromise. It said, freedom, independence, by any means necessary. Where have you heard that before? By any means necessary, huh?
Malcolm A.
You're right, Malcolm X. So that's where Malcolm X got it from.
That conference.
From that conference. Because all the Africans, because Malcolm was a Pan-Africanist, and he was definitely following what was going on. So all the Africans that are gathered, and we're not just talking about the leaders, there are students, there are farmers, there are women, there are just labor unions, right? It's a people's conference. There was a conference previous in April of 58, but the December conference of 58 was about the masses of Africans. And the masses of Africans said, we want liberation by any means necessary. So that's what when Lumumba went to Accra, that's what he was going into, right? So he comes back from Accra, and first thing, like this is December, I think the end of December, maybe even early January. This is organizing mass movements inside of the country, more radicalized. You have a different Lumumba, right? He's speaking a different language. And if you look at read his book, Congo, My Country, and then just juxtapose that to his Independence Day speech of June 30th, 1960, that Malcolm himself said, you need to tack up on your wall, where he just, brings a withering critique to bear on Belgian colonialism in front of the Belgian king who was there, right? So that Lumumba was radicalized by the 58. And he was a part of, and he had moved beyond Kasavubu at this time in terms of radicalism. Because now he's firmly ensconced in the path of nationalists and Pan-Africanists, befriending Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah talks about it in his book, The Challenge of Congo. and where Congo was now seen as part of the radical wing of Pan-Africanism at that time. There were two wings. You had what they call the Monrovia group, coming out of Monrovia, Liberia, and had the figures like Houphouët-Boigny and part of that. And then you had the Casablanca group, where you had the United Arab Republic, Egypt, modern day Egypt, and Ghana, Mali, and
One question that came up after the film was, what was Patrice Lumumba's relationship to Russia or Soviet Union during that time? Like, what was the relationship, and like, how did we get from Patrice Lumumba wanting to cooperate with Belgium to having a relationship with the Soviet Union / Russia?
Yeah, I mean, well, I just shared with you how from cooperation to Belgium, where his radicalism came from, right? From that 58 All-African People's Conference. Now, the Central Intelligence Agency in the US tried to paint Lumumba as a communist. Lumumba responded to that himself in his own words. He said, I'm not a communist. I'm a nationalist. I'm an African nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. So he responded in his own words. We don't have to speculate about it. Unless we don't believe him, we think he was lying or something like that.
We believe him.
He came to the United States. His first outreach was not to Russia, Soviet Union. It was to the United States. He came to the United States. Eisenhower wouldn't meet with him. He tried to get support from the United States because he said, hey, we got our independence, but Belgium still has the soldiers in our country. And they're supporting a breakaway wing of the country in the Katanga with Maurice Chombe. And we'd like your support.
He was
Democratic nation. I'm a democratically elected prime minister, and our democratic institutions are under assault by an ally of yours, Belgium, that you could check. Can you support us? Stiff arm. He went to the UN to get support. The UN responded, but when the UN came in, they didn't come in to support Lumumba. They came in to support the Belgians and the secessionists and the opposition, or those that were in opposition to Lumumba, right? Classic example that's played out is access to radio stations. Kwame Nkrumah talks about in his book, The Challenge of the Congo, where the UN would go in, send the soldiers in, and when Lumumba was deposed by the president illegally, and the president, that's Kasavubu, was on the radio articulating, sharing why that he deposed Lumumba. Lumumba was trying to get on the radio himself to respond, and the UN troops were blocking him. And it was the Ghanaian contingent that was doing that. But the Ghanaian contingent was under the leadership of colonial officers, because Ghana had just got its independence a few years earlier, and they still had European officers. So Lumumba was, furious. He's like, "What's up? This is Nkrumah. Why would Nkrumah do this? Why would the Ghanaian soldiers be against me?" Right? And then Nkrumah talks about it in the book, in The Challenge of the Congo. So he reached out to the US, reached out to the UN. The UN came in and sided against him, sided with the secessionists, sided with the coup plotters, right? So where else is he going to go if you're in that situation? You're a legal government, right? African nations were blocked from helping him, right? So you just have to reorient the way that story is told. That's been a rationale for deposing Lumumba from day one, that he was a communist. He came to the United States. In fact, when he came, a story, just as a side note, he met a young lady by the name of Yvonne Sion. And he invited Yvonne Sion to come to the Congo to work. He was recruiting Black folks in the United States to come work with his government, right? And she agreed. She said, "I'm going to go." right? By the time she got there, he was assassinated, but she went anyways. She's now a doctor, Dr. Yvonne Sion. She's the mother of Dave Chappelle, who was invited to the Congo to work with Lumumba.
Do we have any other questions?
I have a question.
Okay. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I was just, I was thinking about something you said earlier about boycotts, the NBA relationship to Rwanda. And it reminded me, almost word for word, it's a very similar situation, with Sudan, genocide taking place in Western Sudan. With the partnership that the UAE has with the NBA. I think it's almost every camera shot, you can see like a logo for the Emirates. Airline company, and the UAE is one of the largest contributors to the arms sales, the fuel sale that's fueling the genocide taking place in Western Sudan. But my question is to the question of boycott and like how pragmatic we should be as people in the diaspora about the boycott, because like what is the I guess like if we set out with the task like protesting or boycotting or trying to abolish the NBA, like what is that, like is that something we should be aiming to do, or is it too pessimistic to say like there's no point in trying to challenge that, because it's like trying to challenge capitalism, like it's a huge task, and like how do we know if there's like enough like Congolese or Sudanese like political power in the diaspora to like to make like boycott. So I guess like, my question is like, would it be more pragmatic to like try to like use our diaspora forces to like attack capitalist forces like the NBA, or is it more pragmatic to secure to maintain more relationship with those back home and
Yeah, I don't think the way you're posing it doesn't have to be dichotomous. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. You can maintain relationships with folks back home. You have to do that. You have to support. And you can pressure institutions that are part of the problem back home. In fact, it's incumbent upon you being here where to put the pressure on. We did a forum at the start of Congo Week on Sunday. If you check out our YouTube channel, it's at Congo Friends on YouTube. We did sports washing in Sudan, Gaza, and Congo. So it's really insightful comments and recommendations coming from the Sudanese contingent around that. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Boycott has kind of lost its, in a lot of respects, the way boycott is used on social media is not the traditional sense of boycott, right? Because boycott usually, traditionally, it takes education, organizing, movement building, and you come up with a plan with the parties involved to launch a boycott. Today on social media, you just say, okay, we're going to boycott. So individuals say, okay, I'm going to boycott this, boycott that, right? However, before you even get to the level of boycott, there's pressure that can be applied. So, for example, we're a tactic that we're undertaking around the sports washing in Rwanda is to engage with the fans of these teams. Some of these teams have fan clubs, and we, in an education process, to say, well, that your team is, like visit Rwanda. That's not a very good look. You Arsenal or Paris Saint-Germain or Bayern to have that on your sleeve, because Rwanda is committing crimes and they're killing Africans in the Congo, right? So the Arsenal football team, they have a fan club called Gunners for Arsenal. So they armed with the information about what Rwanda is doing in the Congo, they're putting pressure on their own football club. They're like football fans. and they want their football team to be on the right side of history and not be on the side of the genociders, not be on the side of those who are committing mass atrocities, those who are killing Africans. So they're mobilizing and putting pressure on their football team, and their football team has to respond. So the very least we have to do is make them respond. We have to let them know that we are not going to normalize the cleansing of these crimes by these countries, right? That's the very least, especially those in the diaspora. And now Bayern football team in Germany, they're thinking about, they've already said they're going to cease their relationship with, review their relationship with Rwanda and likely cut it out, no more sponsorship. So it does work. The Arsenal football team said that they're considering whether or not to renew it. So more pressure needs to be put on. The Gunners for Arsenal, they released a campaign and a statement today. If you check out our Instagram page, we need people to amplify it and spread it. Spread the word around the campaign. So we have to. It's our duty to put it's our responsibility to put that pressure on. We have to pressure the Clippers. We have to pressure the NBA. We cannot let them have a free pass. I mean, even ESPN did a piece on it. ESPN did an investigative piece on the NBA's relationship with Paul Kagame, where they asking hard questions to the leadership in the NBA. So connect with your journalism department. So on every conceivable level you can think of, we need to put the pressure on, and it can make a difference. In the case of Rwanda, the threshold is much lower than Gaza, and for the Palestinians to get out from under, get the assault that they're under to be stopped. But they have the boycott, divestment sanctions campaign. And that was established in 2005, well thought out, very, very much thoroughly thought out. So that's certainly an option that we should not leave off the table as we continue to support folks on the front lines in Sudan, Congo, and elsewhere.
Hi, I introduced myself earlier, but I'm actually a master's in sustainable development. So I am working with international policy in developing countries. And so one of my, you mentioned earlier about like the things that we can do for the Congolese people, and that the Congolese people, they have the answer. So I'm wondering if you have noticed a contrast between the foreign aid or foreign investment from other countries and how that has been maybe like not lining up with what the Congolese people are needing. And then also, like, do you feel like whatever foreign aid is coming from a sense of white guilt or a sense of reparations and not in a sense of what the Congolese people actually need and would help them prosper?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the question. I wish I could remember this book that was written on foreign aid, but foreign aid is not a product of white guilt or reparations. Foreign aid is a product of strategic interests. The way powerful nations function, there's this theoretician out of Harvard. His name is Joseph Nye. And he elaborated on a theory of power and how states exercise power. He says two dominant ways they exercise power. One is through hard power, right, which is military, and the other is through soft power, right? And you experienced soft power, a state exercising soft power. You saw it, right up front when you watched Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, right? How the United States used music and jazz musicians to project its power around the world, right? So foreign aid is a part of that undertaking, because even when you the foreign aid, a certain percentage of it, I think there some studies have said up to like 75% of the monies that are given, say you're given to the Congo or any other African country, comes back to the US. Because you have to use US contractors, you have to have experts, just a whole, when you're on the ground with a humanitarian organization, the cars that they buy, just everything, right? So it sets up, it's really the buttress foundation for which, a nonprofit industrial complex, right? So and that's one of the things the folks in the Bassanga Coalition talk about. One of the members, he makes an example. He's like, if you give $10 million to international NGOs and $1 million to local organizations, your money will be better spent with the 1 million to the local indigenous organizations, right? But even foreign aid is not the answer. Like, there's $24 trillion worth of wealth in the Congo, right? Even money's going back to Africa. I think it's like up to about $60 billion that go back in remittances from the diaspora, which is more than any foreign aid that's given to them, right?
Yeah.
So the model is, I don't want to say flawed, but it's working in the sense that you're not going to see any development because it's grounded in the strategic interests of those who are giving, right? It breeds dependency, right? I'm not saying that there aren't lives saved, and Trump cut the USAID, and that has had a devastating, detrimental impact on a number of African countries. But
most aid is conditional.
Yeah, and it's
sense
conditional, right? And you have a situation, you have a formula, right? Right? Where you have maybe hundreds of millions of dollars coming in through the front door in humanitarian aid. And at the same time, billions and billions of dollars are going out the back door through companies that come from these countries that are providing foreign aid that don't pay their taxes. Opaque deals that pay off local elites and mineral being extracted to the tunes of hundreds of billions of dollars that could be going in the state coffer that could address questions of education and health and shelter and all of that, all those things that the foreign aid is supposed to address, right? So foreign aid in an environment where a country is being plundered, you really have to question that. You have to really look at it. And that's why the folks in the coalition are saying we want to organize ourselves so we can control our wealth, and we determine the people determine how the wealth is used. Not I shared with you earlier that it said that Congo produces 70% of the world's cobalt, but they don't. The Congo doesn't. The companies in the Congo produce 70%. Right? Yeah. If Congo is producing 7% of the world cobalt, and he lived up to his name, they call Congo the Saudi Arabia of the electric vehicle industry, then you wouldn't have 70 million of the 110 million Congolese living on $2.15 a day, right? But what you do have is one Israeli billionaire who became a billionaire off the Congo making $200,000 a day in royalties, right? $200,000 a day for one Israeli billionaire in royalties, $2.15 a day on the other side hand for 70 million, up to 70 million Congolese, $2.15 a day. So there's a structural problem, right? It's got a colonial legacy, neo-colonial, contemporary system that's in place where the local elites, not just in the Congo, but in African countries, are complicit in the exploitation of their own people and the dependency that they've condemned future generations to. It's a really good book. We were talking about Kwame Nkrumah. He wrote a book entitled Neocolonialism, the Latest Stage of Capitalism, right? highly recommend it because it's a theoretical. It gives you the theoretical tools for assessing what's going on with African leaders. Because people say, look, these African leaders, how come Africa hasn't gone anywhere? But you have African leaders, Black folks leading Black folks. So what's the issue? And then Krumah breaks it down really good in the book. Neocolonialism, latest stage of imperialism. I think it's imperialism now, latest stage of imperialism. Sorry.
We have a virtual question from an attendee who couldn't make it, but how has the AI industry affected the mining done within the Congo? How is it impacting the community? What is the responsibility or the accountability factors for big tech companies towards the Congo?
Yeah, thank you for that. I shared with you earlier that there's one of the students, a PhD student at Stanford, is looking into that very, very question. And a coalition of folks, scholars and organizers, looking at the question of AI. You know, I think Bloomberg News published an article just, I think this week or early last week, where they talked about how Congo is looking to develop. They've been looking to do this for quite some time. The Congo River to dam, the Inga Dam, to produce power that can be used to produce energy that can be used to power AI farms, right? That's one thing that Congo's, or at least they're exploring, anyways. And you know, the AI industry, because of the need of the resources to power it, it amps up the extractivism. And in the current system, as we have it, the extractivism has resulted in what we call the 3Ds, in particular around the Congo: death, destruction, and displacement. In order to get access to the mines, the people have to be displaced. Whether it's the industrial mining, destroys the environment, the water, the vegetation, the food production capacity. And then there are deaths that come from a wide range of causes, right? So at the bottom of that supply chain, the people are paying a dear price, whether it's through child labor, bad health conditions, displacement from their traditional villages, destruction of their environment. Those are the repercussions of the green energy transition, the AI sector, right? So in terms of addressing it, there are several things that I can just share with you what we're doing as an organization, right? So within the tech sector itself, we're working with workers in the tech sector to educate them about the bottom of the supply chain. It's in the semiconductor sector. We're the Masanja Coalition. We did a tour of Europe in May, and we were invited by the United Tech and Allied Workers to come to London to share the stories from the bottom of the supply chain, where the diggers are digging up the cobalt and the copper with their bare hands. So education is the first part, and then we have advocates within these companies that are putting pressure on the companies from within. So that's one path that we've been engaged with. In Washington, right here, you have international rights advocates. It's headed up by attorney Terry Collingsworth. He brought suit against 5 tech companies for sourcing minerals from the Congo that's tainted by child labor. It was Apple, Tesla, Microsoft, Google, and Dell. And so we joined with them to educate people and mobilize people to put pressure on the companies for them to settle the suit. We weren't successful, and the courts ruled in favor of the tech companies. The court said that this is a DC Circuit Court, and they ruled in the spring of 2024. They said that the case had merits, but the missing element was they couldn't demonstrate that there was a venture between the companies that were being targeted by the suit and the mining companies that were providing the minerals, right? Even though Tesla itself had a direct supplier relationship with the mining company, Glencore, but that relationship that they entered into with Glencore occurred after the lawsuit was filed. So it couldn't bring it in retroactively, right? So they're working on another. So they brought out a new suit this spring or this summer that is international rights advocates against Tesla. So the legal avenue is another way. The United States enters into deals with these countries for critical minerals. So the coalition of advocacy groups in Washington were engaging members of Congress to hold the U.S. to standards that the U.S. government to standards that it has in its own country when it comes to mining. We're talking about standards such as prior and informed consent, labor rights standards, human rights standards, environmental standards, right? So they're mobilizing any deal that the U.S. government engages in whether it's in Indonesia and Congo or elsewhere, that those standards are respected. So there's a policy avenue as well that people are pursuing. Right down the street from you at Stanford, they're using AI in their Door School of Sustainability in order to do exploration, using new technology to see how they can discover more minerals. And their rationale is that'll be work to the benefit of the country, because now the country can say definitively, this is what we have, this is where it is, and they can present it to investors. Investors can come in and invest in the country. You can probably tell where we stand on that one, right? So that's on the opposite end of the usage of AI, that those who are using it say that could accrue to the benefit of the Congolese people. I haven't seen any mining deals that have accrued to the benefit of the Congolese people yet,
Yeah.
So if that's going to happen, the Congolese people are going to have to take charge. And that's what the coalition is doing, organizing people, educating people, so that they can be a force to reckon with in terms of them being able to defend their interests. And that's why they're asking for our solidarity. Because if they're left to their own devices, like the government can attack them, the companies can attack them, but if they know that they're connected to students at Berkeley and Stanford and all over the country, that if anything happens to them, that there's going to be an outcry globally, then they'll think twice. I'll give you an example. We're working with some young people in the Congo, maybe about 10 years ago, and the military put them in prison and they were torturing them. And we launched a campaign to get them out, Amnesty International. And they eventually got out. And one of the youth who got out, he told us afterwards that the prison guards were coming up to him and it's like, who are you? Who are these? How do these people know you? Why are they, saying, this person, how is that? So that kind of pressure from the outside in terms of standing with folks on the front lines, it matters. So those are the different strategies that we've been engaged with, that we believe that can bear some fruit as a result. It relates to applying policy pressure, legal pressure, that kind of pressure on governments and corporations that are engaged in this extractive process that to the detriment of the local population.
Well, I will say this, I think we're gonna start closing out, but I also wanted to say, I think it's interesting how we're seeing some of these themes kind of repeat. So within the film, we did see the use of African-American musicians that were used to distract what was going on within the Congo and CIA assassination attempts. And we're also seeing now partnerships with like Kendrick Lamar, the NBA. We saw what was a quote that said that whatever happening to the Blacks in the US is happening to the Congo. And we're also seeing this today with Memphis. A lot of Black communities are being poisoned by the data centers. And that is now just the Congo. I guess I wanted to bridge that gap because I want to know how we can be better aligned diasporically and be more informed about the current struggles that are going on. Because I think a lot of our thinking is that, well, this type of treatment isn't happening today. Like, how do we become better allies in that aspect?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Because there's opportunity there, right? For that kind of alignment. And it begins in these sessions, these type of sessions where we're learning about what's happening in the Congo. And I think it's UC Davis, I believe, had put together a forum where they brought folks from New Mexico, folks from Puerto Rico, folks from working on the Congo together to talk about their aligned struggles, right?
Yeah.
So critical to that is creating space where that discussion, that dialogue can take place, and that's vital, to create those spaces. So that's a point of departure, and then we can build from there, and we engage in a number of those discussions with not only groups in the U.S. but folks in the global South, right? Who have shared experiences in terms of indigenous communities, local communities. And for us at Friends of the Congo, we have empire privilege, right? So we have access to information and resources that folks don't in Kolwezi or Isangi or Mbandaka. So that's where the question that I asked earlier about what we can do in that, because we have this access to information, we can bring that information to bear upon the struggles of people in the global South. So you're there at an institution of higher learning. So continuing to create space in that institution for these discussions to happen is one way you can contribute to that kind of aligned, solidarity. In the spring, let's do something on what's happening in Tennessee and Alabama, right? With these server farms, and how is that connected to the extractive process in Lualaba in the Congo, or Choco region in Colombia, right? So let's leverage our empire privilege to create spaces to have those discussions, and not just discussions, but discussions are a point of departure for building and engaging in principled allyship and solidarity work.
Well, I want to thank you so much. I apologize for the audio troubles at the beginning, but this was such an informative discussion. We do intend to film more of the films from the Congo Week listing. So we'll keep you updated with that to just update you on knowledge. Yeah.
Yes.
But thank you so much.
We're so glad that you're using the resource, right? It's an open space. Yeah. The film and the fact sheets.
I checked out. Yeah.
Yeah. So just and then the action items. We encourage you to continue to spread the word, encourage people to participate in Congo Week, invite them to the forums that you have, invite them to the film screenings, right? encourage them to support our funding campaign. If you tell people to go freecongo.org and support the humanitarian project there. So just keep doing what you're doing, and let's stay engaged and continue to build, and just build a strong constituency for folks in the Congo, and not just in the Congo, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. Let's connect it. Malcolm, I'll leave you with this. Malcolm said that as long as you think you can get Mississippi straight before you get Congo straight, you'll never get Mississippi straight. The point is we're connected. It's a system. We're all confronting that system that's got our people in a death trap. So let's continue to build together to bring about this change that we're looking for.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy the evening, rest of the evening.
Enjoy.
All right, peace.